there's no way that my memory of that room is anything close to what it was like in reality. But I've thought about it so much because it was like such a vulnerable place to be in. That's the room where I met Tom Hanks. That's the room where I showed Tom Hanks how well I could act this scene. And that's the room where Tom Hanks said was very nice to me. And it's also the room where I left and then he decided, no, not this one.
That and so much more coming right up on today's episode of The Pod Spotter. Hi, you're listening to The Pod Spotter. I'm your host, Zack. There are just a shitload of podcasts out there, guys. By the time I finish this promo, 4 new podcasts will have been created. There's just too many. That's why we're here. We're going to do the heavy lifting for you. We're going to find the diamonds in the rough, and every Monday, we're going to talk to the creators and the hosts of those podcasts. We're going to learn about the pods. We're going to play clips, and we hope you find it useful and entertaining. And if you do, subscribe to our little podcast. Visit us at thepodspotter.com and on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at thepodspotter. And there you're going to be able to find some extra content and some information on upcoming shows. Thanks, everybody. Then, like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's really a pleasure. I've been screening hundreds of podcasts. Hi, everybody. Our guest today is actor, writer, comedian Connor Ratliff, who you may have seen on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Search Party, The Chris Gethard Show, or perhaps he took part in one of your favorite heralds at UCB. His podcast, which has recently released its 9th episode, embarks upon a quest to solve a very stupid mystery that has haunted him for 2 decades. Why Tom Hanks fired him from a small role in the 2001 HBO miniseries Band of Brothers. Our guest is Connor Ratliff, and the podcast that you all should be listening to is Dead Eyes. Connor, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing this pod with the world. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to talk with you about it.
I maybe listened to 5 minutes of your podcast before I was like, gotta get him. We got to get him in here. This is why our podcast was made, to highlight, these quirky, fun, interesting, honest podcasts. And before we get too into it, I want to just jump right to the sort of inciting incident and the impetus for your podcast, the call that you got from your agent, which 20 years ago has sent this whole thing into motion. Let's hear that agent call.
The day before I was due to film my first scene, I had booked an afternoon train ticket from Liverpool to London. That's when I got a phone call from my agent. In a panicked voice, I was delivered this news. You have to get on a train to London right away. Tom Hanks has seen your audition tape, and he's having second thoughts. He thinks you have dead eyes. Dead eyes? What did that mean?
How did this all begin, Connor? How did we get here? How did this start as a podcast?
I mean, that's the question, isn't it? How did we get here, and where are we going?
Where are we going?
I went to drama school in Liverpool, England, and I graduated in '98. And then I was an actor for a couple of years in London. It sort of ended roughly around the time the Band of Brothers Dead Eyes incident happened. And then, except for a few sort of stutter stops, I basically took, my next professional acting job was in 2013, I think. And it was I sort of stumbled back into acting after really giving it up for a long time. I tried to do a bunch of other things. Nothing worked out. So really, I would say I've probably been an actor a professional actor for less than a decade, even though I started in my early 20s and I'm currently in my mid 40s.
Yeah. Initially, when listening to it, I had 2 thoughts. The first was, oh my God, I can't wait to talk to Connor and tell him my Dead Eye story. Ooh. And then the second thought was, oh God, Connor is going to become the the patron saint of shitty actor stories. Are you prepared? Have you been prepared for the sort of, because obviously there are guests on your show that share their stories, but I'm sure there are other people reaching out to you that are like, hey, this shit happened to me too. Here's this,
Yeah, I mean, it's every actor has something like this.
Yeah.
The thing that sort of distinguished mine was a weird turn of phrase and the fact that it involved one of the biggest movie stars in the world
Right.
and most beloved. But there are stories that people have that are actually truly like horrific to the point of being criminal.
Right.
And this isn't that, but it is nice to hear back from some people who listen to it and find some comfort in hearing this kind of tale told in this way, where it's both taking it seriously and also acknowledging that this is not the end of the world. Like we lead with the fact that this story is not a big deal.
But it's taken seriously at the same time. It's not a big deal, but it is. You're handling it with care and concern.
Yeah, we're taking it seriously as storytellers, and we are really exploring that, but in part because that's a funny thing to do, to unpack. Normally, this kind of thing is something that you just sort of try to forget about it. You try to move on, and part of what is fun about the podcast is that we're actually like picking at this tiny little scab. And so this one has a couple of factors that make it spark a little bit. One is that if you treat it as if it's a big deal, it's inherently funny.
If it's serial, if it's tonally serial,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the same time, it's not a spoof. These are all true things. And so if I say I was sad about something, I was sad about it. It's like I might not still be sad about it, but there's no artifice to it. You know what I mean? We're doing this in the form of a, serious journalistic autobiographical podcast, but it's sort of like the ceiling for how serious this story can get is fairly low.
Sure.
We try to keep this in perspective. Even one of the episodes that we did, the 8th episode was a completely unplanned thing because
this is Dad. This is your chats with Pop.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was taking a break to go on tour with the band Guster. I was basically opening for them doing comedy stuff. And halfway across the country, halfway through the tour was like March 11th. Everything got canceled by COVID-19. And so I was 2 hours from my parents' house, and it made more sense for me to come here and help them than to go back to New York City where things were spiking. And that was not a planned episode. It also is like the subject matter is more serious than any other episode because it is about like it is a tiny little fragment of a larger story that's immense and tragic and has changed everyone's lives all over the world. And yet we still find a way to frame it so that it kind of has some little connection to my Tom Hanks. There was a Tom Hanks connection to that episode because it was triggered by Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson getting the coronavirus.
That was Tom Hanks' day. That was March 16th or 17th, whatever that was. We all remember. NBA, Tom Hanks, this is real.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, there is that feels like the reason why this pod has been very sticky is that all these problems are so macro and are so huge. And when you listen to Dead Eyes, because it's so small and you can just kind of pull these little threads here, we can solve this. We are behind you. We are getting in this and invested with you. We can solve this little thing and right this little injustice.
Right.
And in a way that is like, I don't know, that's liberating.
And at the same time, maybe we can't. Like we also
yeah, that's true. Let's not take it for
granted. There's
granted.
also, it's so small that it feels like maybe we can solve this, but at the same time, it's like anything, or maybe not. Maybe I won't find the answers.
For those of you not listening, you should be listening. Connor had this situation happen to him when he auditioned for Band of Brothers. He had the part, had money coming in from this, went through various rounds of callbacks, and then the role is taken away from him after Tom Hanks sees his audition. And the note that gets sent to him through the various channels is he's got dead eyes. And so time goes by, and he gets the idea to start this podcast, and the podcast now is on its 9th episode, and it's sort of blowing up. And you talked about being at home now in Missouri and how the pod has sort of morphed and changed, and you're at home with your parents, and there is a really there's a conversation that you have in episode 8 with your dad that I want to just listen to a couple moments when you then have to relive the disappointment of that day with Tom Hanks all over again, but this time with your father. Let's hear the conversation a bit.
Well, I thought the whole Deadites thing was kind of silly, but the more I thought about it over the years, I think it's because you were too tall.
For that character in that scene?
When I saw the actual show itself, the guy is much shorter than the other characters, and although there's no lines really, very few lines that he has, their looks are kind of comic looks. He's kind of a comic relief in a way. And if you were the same height or taller than the other actors, I don't think it would have worked. Sorry to say that, but I think the guy they picked was a good choice for him.
I mean, I agree with you, Dad.
Are you able to watch it objectively now, the scene, and say, oh, okay, it's probably, yeah.
By the time I watched the scene, my main thought was like, oh, they cut most of the lines. And also that guy makes more sense for the scene. One of the most satisfying experiences so far in doing this podcast was talking to the actor who replaced me, because he obviously didn't know who he had replaced or even necessarily that he had replaced someone. He just knew that there was like a last minute audition. But I don't think anyone told him at the time, like, what had gone wrong. He was just like having to audition for a thing that was shooting the next day. And hearing his experience and also realizing that he was auditioning for the part on the same day that I was re-auditioning for Tom Hanks and getting fired. Like, we were in the same building. We were probably within a few rooms of each other, being kept apart.
It's one of the episodes where you actually do actual investigate, like actual journalism, and you guys like solve a thing.
It was a real thrill to do that interview, because part of me was like, oh man, can you imagine if we were like investigating a crime or something that really, because when we started piecing it together, it was like, this is what Woodward and Bernstein felt like when they started cracking Watergate, except it was like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's just me and Adam,
This is Adam Sims. The actor who would eventually, replace you in Band of Brothers.
Yeah. And when I was talking to him, he's now a very acclaimed and successful voice actor. I mean, he does all kinds of acting, but he really he's like won awards. I think he won like Audible's like audiobook narrator of the year a few years ago. And which is funny because Private Zelensky, he has almost no lines in the show. He says almost nothing. So it's funny to think that, oh, this is where he landed, is like, he does all this great voice work. But we both realized, he was telling me that, around 2010, he was living in Canada and he was working in a bookstore, and his career had kind of fizzled at that point. Like, he was sort of struggling and wondering like what he was going to do next. And Ron Livingston, who's one of the actors who was in the scene with him, came into the bookstore he was working at. And I was like, oh, did you say hi to him? And he was like, no, I was too embarrassed. I was too embarrassed to say hello to him.
Oh man.
And I said, Adam, you realize I was working at a bookstore in New York City at the same time that you were working at a bookstore in Canada. And we both, in 2010 or thereabouts, we both were in positions where we felt like we had blown it. And we were like, I guess we're never going to find success as actors. And I found that incredibly kind of heartbreaking and moving to just realize that we had this like other strange connection in common, which was that even though he got a part that I got fired from, at a certain point, our careers lined up in a bad way, regardless of what had happened back then. Like, we both found ourselves thinking like, oh, we squandered our potential, or like we didn't get the breaks.
It is the illusion of this business. You're sort of fed this fantasy as young actors that like the big break, the idea of I get in this and then it snowballs and then I'm a movie star 10 years down the road.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the longer I've survived in this business, I should mention, yes, I'm also an actor. I've been in New York also for the past 20 years, also in Queens, New York for the past 20 years, paying my bills doing this. The reality is more people are doing what we do, right? Where it's like you book a thing and then you don't work, and then you get a thing, you get a little momentum, and then it kind of peters and dies. That's more along the lines of what, how most of us survive. But it's so hard in those moments to think about that and not just think about the opportunity squandered.
I've had experiences where I've booked a role on a show and then I've booked another role on a show and then I've had a couple things going at once. And you start to think like, oh, maybe I'm going to become a series regular. Or maybe I'm going to get
Sure.
a big role that's really going to pay dividends or something down the road, you know? And then a year will go by and nothing will cut your way. And you'll think, oh, am I done? And then a strange thing will happen, which is that all the work you did a year earlier will get released. And everyone around you will think, oh, you're doing really well. And you'll be like, no, I haven't worked in a year. Really.
I'm working at a bookstore, actually. And
Yeah.
Did Adam happen to mention anything in talking to him about what set was like? You know, did he interact with Hanks? Did he interact with the other? Was there anything, because you talk about these multiple timelines a lot on your show, and I'm just curious if you saw anything or heard anything where your personality or your sort of natural ability as a charismatic human could have, you know, used a situation to build relationships.
Yeah. I mean, it was such a huge production, a story that was actually, we haven't had room for it on the podcast. I don't know that maybe we will at some point, but I'll go ahead and say it, which is that when I went to my costume fitting, which was like maybe a week or two, maybe more before me getting fired, I went down to London and they gave me a military haircut. So they shaved my hair. So I had short hair and they fitted me for the costume. But before that happened, I was picked up by a driver in London in a town car who took me to the set at Hatfield Air Base, where this is where they filmed Band of Brothers. This is where they filmed Saving Private Ryan. It's this huge, huge place. And they drove me, it was probably like a 45-minute drive. The same drive that I would later take with the casting director, Suzanne Smith. In that case, it was this terrifying, awkward ride to re-audition for Tom Hanks. But a week or two before that, I had this kind of glamorous version of that where I was like, oh my God, I have this driver and he's taking me to the set. And it's just me in the car. It's not even like a van of people. And he took me, we pulled into what looked like this golf course. We pulled over to this old house that was on a golf course. And there were all of the things that you would associate with a movie set. I had never been on a movie set before, but there were trailers and lights and rigging and there's crew people coming in and out of the house. And I get out and there's no indication of where I should go. Like, where do I go? There's no signs saying like wardrobe is this way or anything like that, or no one there waiting for me, no PA. So I kind of wander into this house where they're filming and I'm very nervous because I don't want to get in the way. And I'm going up to people and I'm trying to ask them where I'm supposed to go. And everyone seems baffled by me. They're all confused. And finally I get to someone high enough up that he's like, what are you looking for? And I said, I'm supposed to have a fitting for this and because I film next week and I'm in the 5th episode or something. And he realizes, oh, you're looking for the Band of Brothers set. This was apparently a completely different production that was filming in a completely different location. Someone was making a movie or TV show in some house on a golf course.
Oh my God.
We were not at Hatfield Air Base. We were at a golf course near Hatfield Air Base. And the driver had just taken me to the wrong, he saw signs of the movie set.
Yeah.
Wow. And then just let me out to wander about until somebody realized. And the funny thing was, no one wanted to talk to me when they didn't realize what I was. And then when they realized I was part of Band of Brothers, everyone became very interested because they're like, oh, you're a Band of, and they're very helpful in wanting to like, do you need me to, help you get there? And I was like, no. Now that I know I'm in the wrong place, I'll just have the driver find the right place. I thought like, oh, this is going to be my funny story from my Band of Brothers experience. The day that they drove me to the wrong place.
This is good set chatter.
This will be great for the talk shows. This will be,
yeah. Chatting with Tom.
Yeah. And I thought, oh, great. I get an anecdote out of this experience.
Perfect.
And I have told that story so few times.
You got to experience what being Zelensky would be like on a separate set. So
yes.
I went in for a pilot one time, and in the pilot, I was testing for a pilot, and in the pilot there was a Luke Perry cameo. I'll never forget this. And so I show up to like CBS Radford to go and read my part, and as I'm walking in, there is a cameo halfway through where Luke Perry, has some, brief moment where he is stealing a car or something like that. And I'm walking to audition, and Luke Perry is walking in with me, and I'm like, they're making Luke Perry audition for the part of Luke Perry, and he was just like, tough business, pal, or something like that. I was like,
Wow.
what? This is the most ridiculous endeavor and the most ridiculous pursuit. And you set up what is going on in the actor's mind, before the rejection. You set it up so well in your podcast. I want to just listen to what is going on in the actor mind when they are the moments they find out they book a role, and sort of the peak before you hit the valley of your podcast. Let's listen to what is going on inside the actor mind.
I was going to be in the TV event of the decade, produced by one of the greatest filmmakers of all time and the 2-time Academy Award winner whose work I had admired since I was a small child. Now, I'm not going to pretend it was a meaty role. It wasn't. My character only had a handful of lines, and they tended to be short and to the point. But I would be on screen, talking to the main character, and I really felt like this was going to be the thing that would jumpstart my acting career. People would look back later and see me in this minor role in a major show and say, that was his first on-screen performance. That's where it all started. I remember saying to someone out loud that it felt like everything was finally falling into place for me. Later on, I remember thinking I shouldn't have said it out loud.
It's so sad. Sad and so true. Like, you just never want to celebrate until a thing has aired, or until a thing is real.
I'm almost inclined to say you never want to celebrate. You're just asking for it.
Well, let me tell you, I booked a scene with the female version of Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep, right? So in my 20s, sort of similar to your timeline when you would have went in for this. And it's her and I got the part. I went through the many circles, the 7 circles of hell to get the part. I get it. And I have the scene with her. So let me just tell you what you've missed out on by not booking Band of Brothers. On average, maybe once a year, someone will find out that you were in it, and they'll say, oh, cool. That's it. That's really it.
Which project
That's really it? It's a movie called It's Complicated. I have a scene with her. I check her in a hotel. It's nothing. And, I remember at the time movie. I was ready to quit. I was like, I'm going to quit my job. It's with Streep. Here we go. I'm moving on up. And then you get your $600 and you got your cool credit, and it really doesn't mean anything. But the reality is that it on top of, like you said, being a respected improviser, it on top of all of your body of work is what makes, the actor, Connor, the interesting thing.
The truth of it is, it's complicated. Like, that title of that movie is not wrong. It applies to your experience as well. That it's like, well, let me ask you this. I want to dig into it because I'm going to be more interested in this than all the people who are like, oh, cool. Like, I'm the person you're going to talk to who's going to be like, no, this should be a 3-episode arc. Why not make a meal of this? Did you meet her before you were filming the scene, or did you basically meet her
on the day?
You were in costume on set.
In costume on set. I'm walking in. She comes in flanked by 2 of the largest bodyguards that I'd ever seen in my life. Yeah, because she is so not.
You gotta protect the street.
Gotta protect the street.
I'm in favor.
We're in
of
Manhattan.
This.
We're in this crazy man. We're out in the elements. We're not on set. So
there can never be too many bodyguards protecting one of our greatest national treasures.
National treasure. She can't just be out there in the elements. So, you navigate them, and hello, we're gonna do the thing together. And she's just she's Hanks. She's who you think she is. There is no separation between that person that she is sitting playfully at the Oscars and the person she is in person. And she was great. And we did the scene, and she stayed for both coverage. So,
that's
folks,
what I was going to ask. That is what I was going to ask.
You don't have to stick around. A-listers don't have to stick around, folks. For your coverage, they shoot their stuff. They're back at Crafty eating or in their trailer.
She didn't have to do that. Not for that scene.
No.
And not for that character. Like, I remember her checking. I remember, if it's what I remember, I've only seen the movie once in the theater. I think it was on Christmas Day.
Wow.
Whatever year that came out.
For sure.
I picked It's Complicated because I'm like, this will be fun. It's going to be fun. It's got Meryl Streep.
Smart.
It's got Alec Baldwin. It's got Steve Martin. It's going to be
Zack
fun.
Robidas. It's going to be great.
That's right. Zack Robidas. It's a small role, but he digs into it, and you can see Streep in his eyes when it cuts to him.
His
you can
live
see her
eyes.
reflection.
You can see,
live eyes. But I remember the scene. I remember her checking into the hotel.
Wow,
I can't say that I remember what your character says or does.
I am
do you
meat
say
reflecting
anything?
light. I am meat reflecting light. I do. I have
What do
a
you say?
moment. I say, Adler J in a superior suite. I can, of course, I can remember the lines. I said them a
Great.
jillion times. Adler J in a superior suite. I have 2 standard doubles. So it was like I have you here for, the low level stuff. And she says, no, that's not me. You must have someone confused. And then I look it up again. Oh, here it is. Yes. Adler J in a superior suite. Yes. I'm sorry. It's the other way around. I have it backwards. So I think she's in the superior suite. She says, no, I'm not in the superior suite. That's someone else, because it's actually Baldwin and the girlfriend, and
Right.
hilarity ensues. What the anecdote from that is, Nancy Meyers, as she's directing, she realizes she cast the wrong person, and she says it to the actor who's working across from Meryl Streep. She says it to me, and she has me do it a couple times, and then she says these words to me, Connor. Oh, I thought you were a different type. Okay, let's go again. She must have thought that I was this, I don't know what she thought. She just thought I was a different type based on whatever I'd worn to the audition or whatever. She just said the words, I thought you were a different type. And I wanted to just run right out of there immediately. But I had to just stand there and do the thing. I had to keep doing the bit. I had to just okay, I can't respond to whatever's happening there. I'm just going to keep talking to Meryl. She said those words. Yeah.
So this is stunning to me. It's also stunning that you didn't lead with this. This
isn't about me. This is about you. I have millions of these horrible stories.
I know, but this is Nancy Meyers. This is Meryl Streep. This is a big deal, and we got to take it seriously.
Yeah. You're right.
Do you think she actually? What do you think really happened? You think she?
I think that because in my second or third callback, I didn't have any clean clothes, to be honest. So I went, and I'm not a good shopper, and I got one of those twosies pieces. I got the tie with the shirt matchy match thing.
Yeah.
And it was all, I was panicking, and I grabbed purple. It was all purple. And I think that she thought I was a little sassy LGBTQ, I was that type. And based on the clothes that I was wearing and the manner in which I speak. And she didn't realize until we were on set that I'm not that person, that I'm a sort of a different type, and that I'm not, I wasn't willing to go and take direction towards that, what she wanted. So I think that we were at odds with what she wanted me to do. And I was too young to know, and to move on the fly. I was 20 something, and I didn't adapt at all. I just kind of kept it straight. And so the reason you don't remember me is it's a blank nothing scene that could have been something more with an actor that was a different type. But this is how I'm breaking it down in my mind. And again, what we're learning from your podcast is that my memory is, this could be nothing. This could be not the end.
It's fascinating to think that, so in her mind, maybe that moment was going to be something where some quirky character actor was going to just make it pop, and it might be a scene
stealer. Here we go.
Did you feel like you had leeway to play around with the scene?
They gave us a couple takes. They gave us a couple moments. It's a major motion picture. John Krasinski standing there. These people are, and there's definitely time to do something. But she couldn't say, hey, can you be a little more sassy? She couldn't. She knew she couldn't. All she could say was that, oh, I thought you were a different type.
That's fascinating. I wonder what was going on in her mind. I wonder.
I don't know.
And did Meryl clock this moment? Were you aware when she was saying this of Meryl?
Meryl's objective was make this young poor boy just feel so good and cozy. Meryl's just oh, you're from Queens. I used to have an apartment in Queens. My husband and I just couldn't have been just more down to earth and just helping me through. And it wasn't like a 20 takes. We're not getting it. What we were getting was fine. It was telling the story. It was good. It was fine. But it was clear
she got checked into the hotel.
Got her bags in.
We just got to get her in that hotel. Got to make sure that the information about the rooms is conveyed.
That's all just to say, hey, you just missed that moment. You just missed. Oh, cool. You're in that? Oh, cool.
Yeah. See, now I think the other part of the story is something. How often do you tell that part? The part where it's, I thought you were a different type, and then you
less frequently. Yeah.
That's the meaty story
stuff.
because
that's the Jedi's.
That's the Dead Eyes moment because
it messed me up for years. It got me in my head for years. Oh, did I not take advantage? Did I not swing big enough? Did I not push hard enough?
Yeah, was this your moment to be like Martin Short in Father of the Bride and really do a character moment that people would be like, remember the guy who checks her to the hotel?
But you don't want to do that because you're with, big dogs. So you don't want to, you don't want to take a big swing, do you? Do you want to?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to ask. And
I thought that would be enough.
And it was enough. Nobody watches that movie and thinks, well, it's good, but there's a moment where it dips. There's a moment she checks in the hotel. And for a few seconds, you feel like they're really off course. And then they course correct. Once she gets up to the hotel room, the movie is back on track and it's fine. I never made it to set, really, for Band of Brothers. I made it close, but I made it to wardrobe. I made it to the... Yeah. A different movie set. But being in the room with Tom Hanks, I was in for less than 5 minutes. And... there's no way that my memory of that room is anything close to what it was like in reality. But I've thought about it so much because it was like such a vulnerable place to be in. That's the room where I met Tom Hanks. That's the room where I showed Tom Hanks how well I could act this scene. And that's the room where Tom Hanks said was very nice to me. And it's also the room where I left and then he decided, no, not this one.
Okay, let's take a quick break here. We'll be right back. We are here to fill the role of looking for great content for you. Aren't you lucky? If you like this show, please check us out and subscribe. Visit thepodspotter.com and on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at thepodspotter for lots of good stuff. And please leave a review, subscribe, rate, judge us, be cruel, be kind, do what you have to do. Go to Apple Podcasts and just help spread the word any way you can. We're going to release every Monday with a great new review of a wonderful new podcast, and we're just going to plow ahead, guys, whether you're listening or not. So please keep listening. If you have suggestions for pods that you enjoy and that you think we should feature, please drop us a line on any of our social media platforms or at thepodspotter.com. Thanks, everybody. Connor, we're watching the guests on your podcast. We're watching their IMDb numbers tick up and up and up. You're getting fancier and fancier boys and girls on your show. That inevitably, it as the listener, you're thinking, okay, we see where this is going. Tom's going to come, right? Tom is going to come on the pod and talk to him. Have you thought about when you're going to be in that room again with him? Have you thought about him actually sitting down and talking with you? Not in the same room, obviously, but in this scenario. Have you considered the conversation?
Yes, I have thought about it. Every now and then I have a file where I will jot down if a good idea comes to me that I think, because I've had several what I think are, and I could be wrong with this, I think I've had several very good insights and ideas that have occurred to me over the past 6 months and over the past 20 years prior.
Do any of them include doing like a pre-interview and then firing him and saying that he has dead voice and you can't use him?
It has been suggested to me, but this would be among the least likely options for me to actually put into motion.
When you're listening to the pod, what the big question that comes to me is not why did he say dead eyes, or even if he's, because that probably could have been filtered. But what is interesting is what the listener just wants to know is like, did this matter? Do you remember this? Do you remember, Connor? Like, did this day happen the way it did?
I want to know. I guarantee you, his memory of that week is so different than my memory of that week. It's crazy. It's going to be. I just want to know what he remembers about that week and about directing that episode.
What he remembers, yeah. I think that there is a world in which, because of the mystical nature of Tom, he sort of exists in this Bill Murray, urban legendy, mythical character that likes typewriters and does weird things, that he sort of takes credit for your now current success and is like, you weren't ready, young man. I had it all planned, like that. Like, well, look at you now. Hey, look what I did for you. Like he just takes credit for the dead eyes and pop.
I would fully. He is entirely responsible for any success that I've had with this.
Look
podcast.
What I did for you.
if I had been fired from an episode of Band of Brothers directed by, I mean, any other director of any episode, and they had said, so-and-so thinks you have dead eyes. I don't even know the names of the other directors of the episodes offhand. There's no podcast. No one would listen to it. The reason that people get hooked is because it also wouldn't have meant as much to me. It wouldn't have been as traumatic. I would have thought some director on Band of Brothers didn't like my tape.
Right.
I would have recovered from that so quickly. One of the things that is most of the response to the podcast, most people get it and most people understand the tone of it and stuff like that. Inevitably with anything, the more people listen to it, they're going to be people who just are not the right audience for it.
Yeah.
And also people who either don't get the joke or they take it the wrong way. I've seen a few, I'll get alerts for things sometimes and it'll say like someone reviewed this, and their response will be like, good Lord, like go to therapy. This isn't for a podcast.
Right. I just don't get it. It's fine.
And the thing that people who are like, oh, get over it. Why are you still dwelling on this? The thing that is impossible about that notion is that Band of Brothers is so big that I am constantly reminded of it. Even if I just was like, I never want to think about Band of Brothers again. Tom Hanks alone, just if it was just him, he does a couple of movies every year. He's constantly being referenced in one thing or another. You can't escape him. And nor can you escape, half of the cast of Band of Brothers went on to be huge stars.
Right.
And so it's something that it's not that I have been thinking about this, stewing about it nonstop for 20 years, but it is a thing that like, I'll be watching HBO or something, or I'll be on HBO Go, and then I'll see I'll be browsing, and then I'll see a thing that says Band of Brothers. I'll be like, oh, right, I was supposed to.
Or you'll get a text from a friend, hey, you saw your buddy Tom Hanks in a thing, and what, like.
Yeah, or I'll be watching, 30 Rock or something, and like Tom Hanks will have a cameo, or I'll watch, SNL at home, and they'll be like, surprise guest host is Tom Hanks. And it's like, I can't not think about it because it's not like Band of Brothers ever went away. This isn't some obscure thing that was big for a moment and then disappeared,
You're working right now on a podcast at a time when a lot of people are not working, and you have a creative outlet, and you have income for our SAG health insurance. And so the longer this pod goes and the more successful it becomes, it sort of is no longer a conversation with Tom about a loss. It's more about, thank you for I'm glad that happened. Have you reconciled with that yet?
Yeah, I mean, there is I have a successful lemonade stand. Thank you for the lemons.
Right.
It really is.
Yes.
Those lemons that you gave me, I've turned them into lemonade, and now I run a Country Time lemonade stand. I have this recurring role on Search Party, which is now come back on HBO
My buddy
Max.
Meredith Hanger, who's the best human in the world.
Yeah, she's great.
Very good. She's great.
And this was a dream gig for me because I never auditioned for it. They knew me from UCB. Not personally. They just had seen me and they knew what I could do, and they offered me the role with no audition, which is to be in a good show that you didn't have to go through that process just because they know your work, was so pleasant. And so I'm in a couple of episodes in the first season, and it's a character that I honestly thought would never return. I really thought I'm in it a little bit, and then because of the way the story goes, I thought, they probably won't bring Ted back. There's no reason to bring Ted back in this. And then in season 2, they did bring Ted back. And my scenes in season 2, I liked even better than my scenes in season 1. I was really like, oh, this is really fun. They're going to bring me back. And then I got it in my head that I was like, oh, I bet they're going to bring me back a bunch in season 3. Like when I saw the way season 2 ended, I was like, oh, I sort of imagined like, oh, Ted could do this and Ted could do that. And I bet they'll have Ted do this. And they did bring me back, and I'm in one episode. I'm in one scene. It's very short. I'm very grateful for it. But it was like another thing where I did it again, where I was like, oh boy, I got carried away, and I started thinking, oh, it's gonna be like this. It's gonna be like that. Instead of just being happy with with the good thing you already have.
Why I think this has broad appeal is that you sort of navigate how we all should be thinking about rejection in an interesting way, and how, just you don't know the trajectory that a failure is going to lead you down. And so all you can do is control how you respond and react to it. And I think that the story of Dead Eyes isn't one of rejection or failure. It's one of taking a bad situation and, using it to sort of, as you said, make lemonade. And I hope that is what becomes synonymous with Dead Eyes, and not just an idea that you got rejected.
One unexpected development of it is someone on social media tweeted at me that when they see me pop up in a movie or a TV show now, they will be like, "Oh, it's Dead Eyes."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, I have accidentally given myself a terrible nickname."
It's a great nickname.
Connor Dead Eyes Ratliff. It's a better name for, I don't know, a pirate or a zombie or something than for a working actor.
I had this experience with my buddy Chinaza. Shout out to Chinaza, who I was asking him if he's listening. I was talking to him about your pod, and he's like, "Oh, I'm a Dead-Eyer. So do you have any expectation about what your fan base should be nicknamed? Speaking of giving yourself a nickname.
I don't know. Deadheads is taken. I don't think.
Can I float two? Can I float two by you?
Yeah. What do you have? Let's map this out. I like this.
I got Band of Connors.
Ooh.
It's not as good. It's just Rattlers. I'm a Rattler.
Rattler.
There's okay, they're not great.
Dead-Eyer. There's something that's
Dead-Eyer.
I'm a Dead-Eyer that sounds like you're not quite sure what you're hearing if you don't know what it's referencing.
It's
you know what
great.
I mean? There's something about it. Because it sounds like
ire,
ire, like
specific.
IRE, like wrath, like Dead-Eyer.
Optometrists. I'm an optometrist.
Someone who is a Dead-Eye, like that is already a nickname for someone who's like a great shot, like a sharpshooter.
Sure.
Is dead, like Dead-Eye Dick, like that sort of thing. So like I almost like the idea of it being singular, which is like I'm a Dead-Eye.
I'm a Dead-Eye. Wow, that's good. Connor, I have a bit of an evergreen on the show where I do How Well Do You Know Your Baby? And I ask trivia about people's podcasts. You only have 8 episodes, so you probably
9
will
now.
know. 9 now.
9 now, yeah.
You would be able to answer all of these questions. So I'm not going to do How Well Do You Know Your Pod today. Instead, I thought I would do a little Tom Hanks trivia. And we play for stakes in these parts. You'll notice some pod swag behind me. And so if you answer 3 out of these 5 questions correctly,
okay,
I'm going to feature some Dead-Eye pod swag in perpetuity up here on the bookshelf behind me. You have 5 Tom Hanks questions. Get the majority correct, and we will advertise your show forever. Are you ready for Tom Hanks trivia?
I will say this. How well I do in this is not a reflection of either my knowledge of Tom Hanks or my enthusiasm. There's something wrong with me that once things become a game, my brain runs away.
Got it.
I would be the worst Jeopardy contestant because I would forget everything I ever knew. So I'm very nervous about this, but excited to play.
All right. Tom Hanks trivia. We won't hold it against you if you get any incorrect.
Oh, I'm devastated by this. This is horrible.
It's not a game. Just don't even think of it. It's not a game. It's just a couple guys chatting.
It's genuinely fun. But it's also so terrifying.
You're going to the dark, sunken place.
I'm going to make a fool of myself.
True or false, Tom has a planet named after him. True or false? Tom Hanks has a planet named after him.
I don't know the answer to this. I'm going to say yes because it feels like I'm just trying to psychologically analyze the nature of the question. It feels like a bad question for the answer to be no, unless you're just that much trickier than me. So I'm going to say yes with no knowledge, and I'm just trying to think whether you're bluffing or double bluffing.
This is false. This is a bit of a double bluff.
It's
an asteroid.
Does he have a star? An asteroid?
An asteroid named after him. He and Meg
It
Ryan
seemed unlikely.
had asteroids named after them when they both came close to Earth. This is tricky. That is going to be the only tricky one. Asteroid number 12818, Tom Hanks is his, and then Meg Ryan also has one.
It's heartbreaking to think, given how much Tom Hanks loves NASA and space, that I have now diminished myself in his aura.
You knew there was something up in the heavens.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on from that one. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. All right.
Question number 2.
I still got chances.
You got a couple. You got 3 out of 5. All you need is 3 out of 5. Hanks revealed that he had type 2 diabetes on what late night talk show back in 2013?
In 2013, I'm trying to think, the landscape of talk shows at that point, was that when Conan had The Tonight Show? Because I feel like the most Hanks-friendly late-night talk shows would be Letterman, because he's a longtime great Letterman guest. But he's also the one who named Conan O'Brien Coco.
Team Coco.
I feel like it could be Letterman. I could be wrong on both counts, but I'm going to go ahead because of the weird time framing of that. I feel like that was when Conan had The Tonight Show. I'm going to say it was Conan O'Brien on The Tonight Show.
Your first instinct was correct. It was David Letterman. You said you led with Letterman. You got to sweep these, Connor. You got to sweep these three.
Now,
I think you can do it. It was fun to hear you break that down.
When did, well, because I showed I had a knowledge base within my losing of the question. When did Conan have The Tonight Show? Because I do get very hazy about the time frame of that. 2013, was that he had already lost it at that point?
I think it's gone by then. I think that's pretty
yeah.
I think it's gone. Like that last question.
I gotta run the table now, right? Or run the, what is it?
I think you can definitely hit 2 out of 3 here.
That's not enough.
In 2010, Spielberg and Hanks were executive producers on what HBO miniseries?
2010? I feel like that's too late for the Pacific, but I'm unaware of what other Playtone miniseries would have been on HBO. I'm almost positive that the Pacific was way earlier than that. But since it's the only title that I have in the chamber, I'm going to go ahead and say it, the Pacific.
That's exactly right.
Is it right? It was 2010?
2010.
That was only 2010? See,
right? It seems
it's also
very
the nature
recent.
of time. I'm very bad at like things that I think were 2 years ago, and then I'm like, oh, that was 2007? Really? Okay.
I hope this process isn't indicative of your audition process, where you have you've done all the work, you have the right thing right away in the chamber, and then you talk yourself right out.
I mean, sometimes I do. Sometimes
I think we all do. It's a horrible, horrible thing, the audition process.
All right, so now I've got my first
you got
point
your first
on the board.
One. You got to sweep,
I just have to get these next
You just
got to
sweep these last 2 Tom Hanks questions.
So I also hate that with this kind of thing that there's people listening who are like, you idiot, you got it wrong.
No one is listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. All right.
What?
So the next 2.
Number 4. What is the only film to feature Tom, Rita, Colin, and Elizabeth, the entire Hanks family?
I wonder if it was That Thing You Do. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that because there's a film, it was The Incredible Buck Howard that Tom and Colin were in, I think.
For those of you just listening, he's trying to read my poker face to see what is the right answer here.
I'm going to go ahead. I don't know if this might shoot me in the foot, but I'm going to go ahead and say That Thing You Do. And
Once again, your first answer is correct. Yes, That Thing You Do is the right answer. I'm not going to let you talk yourself out of it anymore. I don't know where all the characters are. I just know they are all featured and credited in that film.
I just watched not too long ago. I'd never seen the director's cut of That Thing You Do.
Yeah.
You've seen That Thing You Do, right?
Yes. I have little recollection of the first 5 minutes or the last 5 minutes.
I'm going to spoil the end of That Thing You Do. So if you haven't seen it, scan ahead 2 minutes. They're in the studio and the lead singer blows it. And so they lose their record deal and Tom Hanks is like, you can hang out in the studio, but you got to check out of your hotel later today. And that's the way it goes. He then finds out that this jazz hero of his, he's been talking about the whole movie, is in the next studio. And he goes to talk to them and then decides to record his conversation with these jazz legends. And then he calls the jazz radio station that he was on earlier in the movie and says, I have these tapes. Can I give them to your station? And he's like, if you bring me those tapes, you can have your own show. And that's how that character has a happy, successful ending. And what does that remind you of? He starts out trying to do music and he basically does a podcast. He
Fired by Tom, let go by Tom. Sent back to the hotel.
Does a podcast. What is basically the closest thing you could get in the 1960s to a podcast, which is I have a bunch of interviews with a jazz legend. Can I play them on your radio station? And they give him a show. Okay, so I've distracted. I've now gotten 2 right and 2 wrong.
It's just the beauty of what you're doing. His breadth of work is so vast that there are so many. You can just find so many parallels to your journey,
Yes.
your story, and it's really fun. I've been thinking a lot about the Forrest Gump run across country and how this one man starts out with this one singular task, and sort of like community support rallies behind him
by
to
the end
see
of it
all the way through to fruition. And it's like it's very similar to your story arc. I can't wait to see what other ones come along. I digress. We are 2. You have 2 out of the 5.
2 to 2.
Yep, 2-2.
I have to
Gotta
get
hit this
correct.
one. And this might. I'm just going to set this up. This is one of the trickier ones on the list. I'm not sure. Well, let's just give it to you. Forget the preamble. A League of Their Own premiered in 1992. Name one other Tom Hanks movie that premiered that same year, which he has opted to go uncredited for, despite narrating the entire thing and appearing in person at the end of the film. 1992, narrates it, appears at the very end.
1992, narrates and appears at the end. Appears at the very end. That's interesting. Oh, this is going to drive me crazy.
Oh, no.
What
I
if,
want this.
I don't know how much time you have, but
we're going to chop all this thinking out. Yeah, all of this.
What if
all
this
of this
part was just
thinking?
No, leave it in. Just like people will be like, there's 6 more hours in the podcast, and it's just this guy.
Birds in the background.
Okay, so 1992, League of Their Own. Around that era, he had Sleepless in Seattle. He had Philadelphia shortly after that, right?
I'm going to give you an actor. I'm going to give you Elijah Wood because it's such a deep cut in Tom Hanks canon. I'm going to give you Elijah Wood.
The movie that keeps popping in my head is Radio Flyer.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Radio Flyer. He's hit it. Have you seen the movie? Do you like the movie? Do you remember it?
I've never seen it.
It's a beautiful little film.
I've never seen it.
Oh, it's great. He and Elijah Wood and
I can't believe that I got that.
I can't believe you did either. I am going to proudly display.
You've seen my hands. I have not.
No, I know you were looking up into the sky. You're good. You're good. Connor, I'm proudly going to display some Deadeye swag.
If the camera falls down, you see a giant poster of every possible fact.
That's right. All Tom Hanks movies. You got it correct. And so I just want to show you, till the end of time, I have your headshot up here on the bookshelf. Your dead eyes will be peering out.
Can I tell you how stupid I am?
Go ahead.
on the Zoom, there's a little window in the corner.
Yeah.
Of me.
Yeah.
And for a split second, I looked up and I'm like, how does he get a photo? Like that you had printed out a photo from this. And then I moved and realized, oh, he's pointing somewhere else. Yes, I see my headshot there.
You'll be a part of this.
I'm peeking out. That is so perfect. Thank you. I'm honored.
Your eyes will be a part of this until the end of time. I've enjoyed your podcast so much. I had a weird experience I forgot to tell you about while listening, where it was the Seth Rogen episode, and you were talking to Seth, and I had a moment where something that he spoke about, my eyes sort of rolled back in my head, and I had that like out of body experience where I'm just seeing memories and flashes. I just want to play the Seth Rogen clip for you for one quick, and then I'll share the story, the brief anecdote of my dead eyes. Let's play Seth.
We do specifically try to reach out to actors and tell them they've been cut out of things and tell them why before the movie is seen, so they aren't expecting to see themselves and they know why they are not seeing themselves. And that only comes from learning the hard way and literally having actors show up at the premieres to some of our early movies and me and Evan looking at each other and being like, oh shit, like we didn't tell this person they're not in the movie anymore. Like they're about to have a very bad evening, you know?
Connor, I hadn't thought about this email in 5 years. I hadn't really thought about the experience at all until I heard that clip. And I had that moment and I was like, oh my God. And I quickly went to my inbox and I found this email. Ready?
I'm so excited by whatever this is.
Hi. We worked together this past year on Stephen Daldry's film. I'm writing to you to say that we have finally locked picture and what has been a long journey is coming to an end. I know Stephen and I both want to thank you for your immense skill and imagination that you brought to the film. Simply put, you did a fantastic job and you were an absolute joy to work with. Unfortunately, Zack, I'm writing to let you know that your scenes did not make it into the final cut. I'm so sorry. We both wanted to have everyone in the film, especially your character, as the material was so strong. I do hope we can work together in the future. It would be my honor. That film, Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, stars Tom Hanks, and I was cut out of it.
Wow.
And I received this email. And I think the reason it had been buried is because this email is so sweet. Like, it's so nice. It's very thoughtful, and I think I was able to process and have closure to it.
Yeah.
And I want that for you. I want that same closure for you. I had forgotten that I'd been cut from that movie because I blocked it into I guess, deep down subconsciously out of existence.
What role did you play in that film?
So this experience was you got it. You got the job. You booked it. Tom Hanks movie. Same stuff. You tell everyone I booked a Tom Hanks movie. I'm going to be in Extremely Loud, Incredibly Close. It's a Tom Hanks movie. You get that Tom Hanks sugar attached to your name, right? You get that pop.
Yeah.
And this sort of just kept going, like, it just kind of kept getting worse in that, okay, you booked the time. It's still your job, but it's going to be with the second team. You're going to be shooting with the second unit. Don't worry. Still got the lead kid. Everything's great. I show up to set.
Right.
It's the second unit, and the kid's not there. It's the kid's stand-in. So the lead's not even in it. It's just me. It's just going to be my stuff. The kid, if you remember the film, is going around trying to learn about his father. Okay, that's fine.
He's trying to solve this mystery.
We're still here. I still got, I have this beautiful day on set. Neighborhood kids are asking for autographs. It's a dream job. And then I find out, we can't use it. We can't use the clip. It's not, the scene's not, it's just, we're over. I get the email, right? That's fine. Okay. I processed that, this kind of kept getting downgraded. I'm going to keep the credit up on IMDb though. I'm going to keep, I'm going to keep having that little credit next to mine. And then like a week went by and they removed, IMDb was like, no, you're not in this film. You can't even have the credit. Things just kept getting ripped from me in this experience. And by the end of it, I just had nothing left.
Wow.
They'd beaten me.
You got to get into that. You know what you got to do. I don't know. I'm not pretending to be any kind of expert in how to maneuver IMDb. You got to get in that trivia section.
Ooh.
You got to go in that. Trivia section.
Trivia.
Get yourself into the trivia.
Well, I like trivia. Hey, one other thing I wanted to bring up to you was this AI thing that happened a couple days ago. Did you see that the first AI entity has booked a lead role in a major motion picture? $70 million sci-fi film. The lead character is artificial intelligence, which theoretically has the deadest of all eyes. And here she is. Her name is Erica, and she's going to be the lead of a show, of a film.
Wow. I mean, I had not heard that story, but I guess a week before, was this week or last week?
Yeah, this week. I think this week here. What's the date on that?
Yeah, I think a week ago I saw an article saying that AIs had started making pizza. So I guess this makes sense.
That was the natural progression, pizza to
I'm like,
lead of a major motion picture.
You're making pizza one week, the next week you're starring in a movie.
You can just extrapolate this out and see where they're, she's going to do the late night junket. Like, she's going to do Letterman, and she's going to, like, this is the end for us. No one will ever have to suffer an audition of dead eyes because AI will take it over here. She learns lines.
Well,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
She learns better than us, and she won't get lost. She won't get lost and go to the wrong set. She'll be there on time. Yeah. We're done. We're done here. We're replaced.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that is, I'm terrified of those robot dogs. They did that Black Mirror episode that's all about that robot dog.
Yes. Best episode. Yes.
I'm more worried about those than I am about the AIs taking my acting jobs.
You think we'll be all right?
No, I don't think we'll be all right, but I think the robot dogs will get us before the AI actors do. You got to triage these concerns.
Well, thank you, Connor. As you know, it is the last 5 minutes of our podcast here, and one thing I like to do is use this time to creatively do whatever you'd like. You could tell a poem or share a secret. It's the last 5 minutes of a podcast, which means no one is listening. They've ended their jog and they're no longer cooking their meal. They've left us. It's just you and I. And if there's anything you want to share,
great.
I'd like to share a story with you. I'll go first, and you can think of something.
Yeah.
And I wanted to share this the secret of Kevin Spacey, this moment I had with Kevin Spacey, I thought this would be a good one to share with you. And that I had an interaction with him after a show that we were all working on, where he, I was sort of Me Too'd. He caressed the small of my back and just kind of said some nice words to me with what I perceived as an advance. And that over the years has been, that's family lore now. And whenever, sort of like with Tom Hanks, whenever a Kevin Spacey thing would happen, people would be like, "Hey, Kevin, I saw your buddy Kevin." It's like this weird instance has been canonized by the family.
This is a fun little story, which is...
This is go ahead, no one's listening.
Okay. A few years ago, I was doing a corporate event. UCB would get these corporate events. There was a keynote speech that was being delivered that was about this like advertising guy was... the point of his speech was that he was declaring that rumors to the contrary, creativity is not dead. And then he was going to talk about like advertising and tech platforms and stuff. And we thought this was such a ridiculous premise. We were like, who said creativity was dead? Like I don't hear anybody saying that, but he was like defiantly saying that creativity is not dead. And so we planned this whole thing that had to do with when we'd start the ceremony, someone would dress up like the Grim Reaper and come in with a tombstone that said like creativity from like the beginning of time to like 2014 or whatever year this was we were doing it. And so they approved this sketch. We're like, we'll just make a big thing about like the Grim Reaper coming in declaring that creativity is dead and don't believe them. And the guy who was giving the keynote speech got drunk and got locked out of his phone mid-speech and couldn't remember his password to unlock his phone. And he never delivered in any form a single sentence referring to the fact that creativity is not dead or the death of creativity. He never said anything about it. And we're standing at the back we're getting ready to host the show and open with a sketch that is entirely in response to him giving a speech about creativity.
Oh, no.
Contrary to rumors to the contrary, creativity is alive and well, it is not dead. And I remember, and they had like nitpicked us for days writing this like sketch. Then we turned to the people who are organizing it, like, our sketch doesn't have our premise doesn't make sense. Someone's going to wander through as the Grim Reaper delivering a punchline to a joke that has not been set up. And the people who were running it, who for all afternoon, they'd been giving us notes on, well, this won't work and this won't work. They were just like, I don't know. They just like shrugged, like, you got to go out there. And so we had to go out there and do a sketch to a ballroom full of people that made no sense. Like, they just stared at us because we were confidently delivering this. We started delivering a speech, and then the Grim Reaper enters and says, creativity is dead.
It's the real stuff that pays the real bills, and it shows your history of taking lemons and making lemonade and just soldiering through. I thank you.
In that case, I don't think we made lemonade. I think we just like dropped the lemons on the floor and said, look at these lemons.
You juggled the lemons a little bit. You took the lemons and you were like, maybe this. You guys into this?
Yeah, we squeezed the lemons at the audience in their eyes. Were covered in lemon juice, but it's not what they wanted and they didn't understand why.
I can't wait to see what is next for you, Connor. I think that you are
I hope we work together on something.
I'd like that very much. Thank you, Connor. Can't wait to hear what's next.
Nice to meet you.
This has been the Pod Spotter, where we showcase the pods that you need to know about. If you have one that you think we should know about, let us know via thepodspotter.com or on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram at thepodspotter. One that is just burning a hole in your heart you need to let the world know and nobody knows about it. Let us know, and we're going to tell everybody. Thanks. This has been Zack Robodos. The Pod Spotter is created by the Price Brothers, produced by Oink Inc. Radio, associate producer Tori Adams, and is recorded and produced at Baker Sound in Philadelphia.